Two major ancient Egyptian cities were lost for more than 1200 years. French archaeologist Franck Goddio has been looking for more than 42 years. Finally, he discovered those two cities on the shore of Alexandria, Egypt. Those two cities now on a display in Minneapolis Institute of Art. As an Egyptian myself, I always wonder how the West is really fixated or fascinated by ancient Egyptian history. It took the French archaeologists more than 42 years to find two missing cities, and Sisi, the president, took him 40 days to sell two islands to Saudis. So I asked him, what is his fascination of Egyptian history and Egyptian civilization?
Yeah, there is a great fascination about Egyptian civilization because first, it's one of the first, if not the first civilization and writing. That means history, because you don't have history if we don't have writing. And here you have in the 4th millennium BC writing appearing, which, by the way, will not change for several thousand years. If you can read hieroglyph of the 4th millennium BC, you can read hieroglyph of the 1st millennium AD at the beginning, up to the 4th century. The aspect of that civilization is, of course, fascinating for all the world.
It seems not fascinating enough for the Egyptian because most of the discovery done by non-Egyptian, the major discoveries.
I don't think so.
I mean, it's a generalization.
No, you have, since now nearly a century, you have, there were a general secretary for antiquity, and now there is a ministry for antiquity, and all missions in Egypt are joint mission with that ministry. You don't have somebody discovering something like that.
You have things.
Yes.
But it seems like Dr. Hawass was always like the only one who can talk about antiquity for 30 years during Mubarak. He's reminding me of like a dictator of antiquity, it's just monopolizing everything, but that's a different show. Every story has a beginning, so I asked them, how did it all start?
It started in the 80s. I made a trip to Egypt, and in order to see what was done in underwater archaeology, and at that time very little was done in that field because we were really at the start of that science of underwater archaeology. And at that time I met Egyptian archaeologists in Alexandria, and we were discussing about the potential, etc. And one archaeologist mentioned that there were some missing cities. We were not talking only about underwater archaeology, but also we have ancient texts from the greatest authors of the antiquity. Herodotus himself, who is called the father of history, came to Egypt in 450 BC and made a trip to Egypt. And we have made a lot of writing about that trip to Egypt and what he was able to know about Egyptian civilization at that time. And by the way, Herodotus said and wrote, everything we know ourselves Greek proceeds from Egypt.
When the father of history gave the city a Greek name, that adds another twist and another layer of confusion and more research.
Okay. This has made a big twist in Egyptian history, is that you have a lot of Greek writing about Egyptian civilization, which especially on religion, whereas on some part of the region, especially on Osiris religion, there is very, very, very little Egyptian hieroglyphic text because it was quite secret,
Those two series were well documented through histories, but there were no place to be found on land. Franck Goddio thought if it's not found on land, that must be under the water.
Because at looking from different texts and looking the distance from one city to another, it did not make sense when you had the actual map of the coast of Egypt. Very often, when putting the distance and the direction, I was hitting the sea. Thus, I thought that most probably those cities has disappeared under the sea. And there was a very important element, which had been brought by Prince Omar Toussoum. Prince Omar Toussoum, before the last war, was a powerful prince of Alexandria region. He was the owner of the land around Abu Kirbe, and he was a very knowledgeable person, very fond of archaeology. And he discovered nearby the shore of Abu Kirbe some antiquities. And this proved to me that if there were some antiquities even nearby the shore, but at sea, it could also lead to the fact that other antiquity could be much farther at sea. Thus,
we're talking about a huge area that you are extracted, like 100 square...
more than 100 square kilometers.
My goodness.
Yes, it's a larger. Thus, there was no way just to dive and to see something, was to proceed with a geophysics survey. And in the 80s, those instruments, which could have helped me to discover such a thing, didn't exist. Thus, I started to make, with the French Commissary of Atomic Energy, an agreement in order for them to develop a very sensitive geophysics instrument, which is called a nuclear resonance magnetometer, which can detect things that you can't even. And they came up after 2 years with such an instrument. I tested it in the Philippines. It was working beautifully. And at that time, I said, with that instrument, there might be a chance to discover things which are nearly non-magnetic and which are buried under the sediment and covered by the sea. And I came back to Egypt, and I have asked the Ministry of Culture at that time a permit to make that survey. I obtained that survey, and we performed a large survey in Alexandria Bay for the Portus Magnus, the Greek port of Alexandria, and then in Abu Kirbe in order to look for those 3 missing cities. We started in 1977, the survey. It took 2 years to have 2 years of generating maps and diving in order to control if an abnormalities, magnetic signal was corresponding to something interesting or not. And you had modern wrecks and modern waste, barrels of oil and things everywhere, of course, in the bay. You have the large army naval facility just in front. You can imagine during years and years what has happened. Thus, and in 1999, 1.2 kilometers away from the coast of the city of Abu Qir, we had very strong and large signals. We dove, and we saw what? Sand. Nothing. Thus, we understood that if we wanted to see something, we had to excavate. And we started excavating, and there, granite columns capital, big walls, etc. And we started to discover statues and inscriptions. And we could prove that we were in the city, the famed city. And we had a great success in discovering fabulous artifacts, rose statues. And 1 year later, because we were still performing the survey, we have found 1 city, but still 2 were missing, Archae and Tunis. And in 2000, at 7.5 kilometers away from the coast of Egypt, we are here, we started to excavate. We found the foundation of a big wall, 175 meters long, then another one perpendicular to it. I understood that we hit a big temple. And we know the layout on an Egyptian temple, they are all built on the same way. They were very, very permanence of the civilization. The holy saint of the temple, which we know it's at the end in the small room. Thus, let us go there. We started to excavate there. 1 meter, sediment, sediment. 1 meter and 50, sediment, sediment. 1 meter and 80, we started to have a small pyramid of red granite, pink granite. We went on excavating, and it was a house. That means a monolith chapel, which, by the way, weighed 3 tons, which used to be closed with 2 doors and contains the statue of the main god. Fabulous, you know. But even more than that, there was an inscription on it. Thus, at that moment, we knew that we were in the city of Archae. We went on excavating that temple, and under a wall, we found a beautiful inscribed stone, intact, saying, Pharaoh ordered that the decree, be erected in the city of Tunis. Thus, with those 2 artifacts, we could say that the city of Tunis and the city of Archae was the same. Tunis was the ancient name of that city, nice. Egyptian name, and Archae was a Greek name, you know, always this Greek filter on it.
After years of research and search and excavations, Franck Goddio never had any doubt.
But you have to be fully convinced that your theory is right if you want to succeed. Because if you have the slightest doubt, you will drop the case after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
How is it different to find things, artifacts, or this statue underwater as opposed to in the desert somewhere?
Excellent question, because it's totally different. Some things which are extremely well preserved on land would have nearly disappeared under the sea. But other things which has disappeared on land because of flooding, because of things like that, has been totally sealed by the sediment of the Nile and the sea. And you are discovering, for example, in the main temple of the city of Tunis, Archae, we are discovering all the ritual instruments, whether they are bronze, silver, or gold, at the sites they were when they have been swallowed by the sea. Because those 2 cities has been swallowed by natural disaster.
Earthquake. So it was an island first, right?
No, absolutely not. It was the coast of Egypt. The coast, it was on firm land, you know. You were in Egypt, like you were in Alexandria. And can you believe that after 1,000 years, maybe Alexandria will be 10 meters down under the sea? It's exactly it. It was land. Those cities were powerful cities. Tunis Archae was a port of entry to Egypt. All boats coming from the Greek world had to go through that city. Pharaoh himself had to go to the main temple of that city in order to become Pharaoh.
Finally, yes. The writing on the wall. There is no doubt anymore. So, is this a beginning or the end?
We are just starting. You have to understand that the city of Archae, which is 7.5 kilometers away from the coast, now totally sunken under the water of the Mediterranean Sea, was twice the size of the city of Pompeii. The city of Pompeii is under excavation since the Renaissance period and heavily excavated since the 18th century. And I would say at least 1/3, if not half of that city of Pompeii is not yet excavated.
French underwater archaeologist Franck Goddio, he was passionate, he was interesting, informative, insightful. What a way, looking for those 2 missing cities in Alexandria, Egypt for more than 40 years. Now they are an exhibit in Minneapolis Institute of Art, where he is taking me now for a private tour. This is the first time I'm coming to an event like that, and I don't meet Dr. Hawass, which is a great thing.
Look, this is a very important monument.
And where you started? It's in the front of the exhibit.
Exactly. It's one of the first monuments we found in the city of Canopus. The top has been discovered on land in the 18th century. It was brought to France, given to the King of France, and is now in the Louvre Museum.
Here we go again.
The base has been found by Prince Omar Toussoum in the 1930s. And that monument was so important that Champollion, in the Louvre, saw the inscription and said, It's the Egyptian calendar. It's a very important monument, but too much is missing. I can't say anything about it. So because it's written here. Here is, you have the name of the pharaoh, Nectanebo I, 380 BC. He is the greatest pharaoh, the most powerful pharaoh. He is building temple. He is covering the temple by gold, with gold, the city, which is at the mouth of the Sea of the Nile. And I order that all ship coming into Egypt or going out of Egypt, we have to go through that city. And all ship, we have to pay tax and duties. Or all manufactured gold or raw material, tax. Here you go again. Here you go again. And wood, gold, etc. And 10% of those tax will be given to the goddess of Lower Egypt.
At the end, we walked into a dark room and we saw Queen Isis with a missing head. This is beheaded here.
Yeah. I'm afraid to find the head. You know, if ever she's knew that it was the greatest civilization, they consider themselves as a great civilization with some reason. With some reason. Yeah.
It's not fake.
No, it was not fake. Well, we excavated everything, and it was under 2 meters of sediment, and you find the basis of the monument. And you find
French underwater archaeologist Franck Goddio at Minneapolis Institute of Art, where Egypt sunken cities will be on display for almost 6 months. He was passionate, he was insightful, he was wonderful to talk to. There is a great fascination of ancient Egyptian history and ancient Egyptian civilizations, but who are those people here in the Twin Cities, the followers who actually they're going to show up at Egypt sunken city? For that, we go to the exhibit creator, young Ludwig Grotus.
Okay, so there is indeed a fascination with ancient Egypt, and I think Frank touched on the fact that the Egyptian civilization is so old and persisted for such a long time. There's also the aspect of mystery, of things that are hidden inside of pyramids or that cannot easily be read, like hieroglyphs. You have to decode them. And this is even more the case in this exhibition, since these cities were hidden under the sea. So there's this sense of discovery and wonder.
How long did it take to move all this to bring them here?
So there are about 250 objects in this exhibition, going from very small rings in gold to the huge colossi, 5-6 meters high, that you saw in the lobby and in the hall. And so all these objects came from St. Louis, where this exhibition was on view before, and they were hailed here by trucks, and cranes had to take crates to put them on the second floor. It was a major undertaking, and also involved the work of engineers, because we had to make sure that the floors of the museum itself were strong enough.
I hope you have insurance on those pieces.
We do.
Millions of dollar insurance, but... Young Ludwig Grotus, curator of Egypt's sunken city here in Minneapolis Institute of Art.